What is there to talk about on this show? I guess we're just going to have to figure it out, right? Because there's not much. AEW had tremendous momentum following All In. And then they went to this very tiny arena. I mean, this venue was really small. It seemed like it's situated in some sort of residential area, because when the Young Bucks did their pull up, there were houses all around. Then there's like this building in the middle of a residential area of Chicago, and this is where they're holding the show. And this building holds 5,000 people. They didn't even do 1,500. They did 1,100 people. This is a shade under, or a shade over rather, TNA numbers. This is the number 2 wrestling promotion in the world, and they got 1,100 people in a venue after their biggest show of the year. And then they didn't really do much in order to entice people to come back next week. They're doing a residency in Chicago, right? So they're going to be in Chicago for a while. I'm not sure how long the residency is. I don't know if it's a month or a little under a month. It don't really matter. But residencies are hard. You know, when you're running the same building every week, you have to entice people to come to that building every week. What are you going to put on that's going to make the people say, you know what? I went last week, but I need to go this week too. Because that's the challenge. When you're not traveling and instead you're situated in one place, what you're dealing with is the challenge of, I've been to the circus, why would I go again? If I went today, why would I go tomorrow? Why would I go next week, right? So I didn't see anything on this show that tells you need to come out of your house and come to AEW next week to watch this show. It's going to be in the same venue, to my knowledge. So I don't know what they're doing, you know, but we got to talk about it. So here we go. This is not going to be long. I promise. This thing might be 20 minutes. Unless I get on a rambling about something, this won't be long. Hangman Page said that the fans deserved it because they wanted a revolution. They wanted a different approach to pro wrestling. The fans are the real revolution. And the fans deserved a champion that understood that connection and had gratitude. This is, of course, inside baseball. This is more of that pandering stuff that AEW fans like to do, the rah-rah speech. We are the revolution. We are this. We are that. And let's be honest, and I don't want to do this, but I have to. AEW literally only exists because of the pipe bomb promo that CM Punk cut. When CM Punk did that pipe bomb promo, yes, the indies already existed, but there was not that groundswell of pride over being an indie wrestling fan until that moment. Then all of a sudden, everybody who had watched him on the indies and everybody who was a fan of Danielson on the indies and all that kind of stuff piped in and started being like really loud. Again, I was there. I remember that sometimes you have to, you didn't have to dig deep in the wrestling sheets or, on blogs or whatever to find people who thought CM Punk was great and that everything Ring of Honor was tremendous and fantastic. Usually it was just people pretending to really like TNA. But then after that promo, it got real obnoxious, like super obnoxious. So I really don't want to give the AEW fan base too much credit. I mean, Tony Khan made it happen, so he's the one that should get the credit, if anybody should get the credit. I mean, if it wasn't for his billions and billions of dollars, his unlimited pocket, and his dad's willingness to lose a bunch of money, this thing wouldn't be happening right now. But in kayfabe, it makes sense that Hangman Page was chosen by the people to be their representative. And that's a lot of that is because he's friends with the elite. There was a conversation that happened on Twitter where somebody said that Hangman Page is such a classic character that he could have been over anywhere. He can get over anywhere at any time in history. And I was just like, look, not to disrespect the man. I don't like him at all. But I think that people set wrestlers up with that kind of talk. And there's a lot of this exaggerated love for AEW. Like these guys, somebody said like when people do reaction videos to, I know it sounds like I'm jumping all over the place, but I promise I'm gonna make it make sense. When some guy did a reaction video where he was talking about watching AEW All In, and all these people who claim that they have YouTube channels or TikToks or whatever, and this new AEW show was so amazing, so awesome, it's like they joined a new religion. You know, like they had an experience where their eyes are all teary, and you see these guys and they start adopting all the same language. What are you talking about? This sequence was fucking sick, bro. You're like, what? Why all y'all guys talk like this? And I say all that to say this. Hangman Page is a product of this era. If it was let's say 1995, then he would be in the middle of the card in WCW somewhere. And nobody would care about him. Nobody would remember him 15 years later. He'd be like Paul Roma or something like that. Right? And I'm just being honest. You know, Paul Roma was a great guy, in shape. You know, never really got a chance. Really didn't get to see what he could do in terms of microphone stuff, but solid tag team worker. Everybody loves Power and Glory. Nobody was pitching for Paul Roma to be the main event, though. I think that Cowboy Page would be solid United States champion. You know, solid Dustin Rhodes tier performer. He wouldn't be considered top tier anywhere. He certainly wouldn't have been considered a top tier wrestler in like a territory era and the Attitude Era. My God, he'd have been laughed out of the building for being such a sissy. Now, he probably would have been a big star in the early 2000s, maybe the 2010s, because that's when things started to change a little bit. But he's a product of this time, because a lot of the people who like him because of what they think his personal politics are. They like him as a person. Whether the character is any good, whether his matches are any good, is only secondary to the fact that they like him as a person. Now, I can like somebody as a person and still think they're the shits. And in this instance, I really don't like Hangman Page either way. But he's certainly not the worst. That's why I say he's a solid mid-carder who is at the top of the card because he's friends with the bosses. I know they lost their EVP champ titles in a match, but they're still the EVPs, right? And they're still very important to the product. And Tony Khan's paying this guy a lot of money, so you might as well push him, right? So the main event of the show was Hangman Adam Page, Mark Briscoe, and Powerhouse Hobbs defeating the Death Riders, which was Jon Moxley, Claudio, and Yuta. I'm going to bypass the criticism of Moxley and Hangman Page wrestling again on this show shortly after they tried to murder each other. I mean, one guy stabbed another guy in the head with a fork. The other one got lynched. And, well, nope, that was the same guy. Same guy who got stabbed in the head with a fork also got lynched. So, I mean, he's back. I don't think I even saw a Band-Aid on his head or anything. He just woke up today ready to have a 6-man tag with this guy. And didn't try to disembowel him for stabbing him or lynching him or nothing. Just had a regular-ass 6-man tag. How polite of him. Anyway, Darby Allin was up in the rafters looking down on the match after Hangman Page won. And it hit me at that moment in time that Darby was supposed to be Sting and Moxley was supposed to be Hogan. That was Tony Khan's idea. Tony Khan did an interview recently where somebody asked him if Hangman Page was always the plan, and he said, I don't have to answer that. It was kind of a joke. But clearly he pivoted from Darby to Hangman. So the plan was for Moxley to beat Hangman and then for Darby to be up in the rafters, similar to Sting. And it makes sense because who did he pick to be Sting's Robin? Batman and Robin. Who did he pick to be his Robin? Darby. So he wanted Darby Allin to be like the ghost of AEW. And we already knew that this whole thing was set up for Darby to win. But I didn't think it was going to be just a ripoff of Sting. This guy is not Sting. And Moxley is not Hogan. And the Death Riders are not the NWO. They were killing the business. They were strangling AEW to death. One bulldog choke at a time, this company was fucking dying. And you were going to continue this? Oh, thank God they bailed. Even giving it to weirdo Hangman Page is better than keeping it on Moxley. I can tell you that. So Hangman is really kind of like Lex Luger in this situation, right? He beat the guy. Is he going to lose it back to him, and so Darby can take it for good? Probably not. That's not AEW speed. They're not going to do nothing like that. But they're teasing Darby and Moxley, which of course now doesn't mean anything because Moxley isn't the champion anymore. So why should we give a shit? Darby took off when the company needs him. The company needed him, and he went to climb Mount Everest. That would be the first fucking thing I will say. You know, hey, you were supposed to be the big hero. Where the hell were you? Oh, you were off on your personal mission to climb Mount Everest. Like a dumb fuck. Yeah. How about that? First match on the show, Kyle Fletcher defeated Mascara Dorada, and then he threatened to murder Dustin Rhodes afterwards. Said he's going to ruin Dustin's life. So that means that you won't see Kyle Fletcher on Dynamite much. He's going to be hanging out on Collision with Dustin. Okay, fine. Mascara Dorada versus Kyle Fletcher is probably the most interesting thing to watch on the show. The Young Bucks, they had some interesting stuff. They showed up in an Uber because their limo got destroyed. They were walking around in this. It looks like, I swear to God, when I worked on the West Side because I was doing like community outreach stuff. And once I went into a church, and the basement of the church had a kitchen in it and all that kind of stuff. I say that to say this: that venue that they were in, the basement of that venue looked just like the basement of that church that I worked in when I was in the kitchen. It looked just the same. I could not get over how janky this venue was. It was an old church, by the way. But they don't have luxurious locker rooms anymore. Nobody respects their names. They're back to calling them Matt and Nick. They're being disrespected. They're being laughed at by Ricochet and all these guys. And then Don Callis decides he's going to recruit them for this match tonight. And they have this goofy-ass all-star tag team match where Bandito got choked out. So after Bandito's excellent weekend, where he put on an absolute banger with Konosuke Takeshita, he got thrown into that silly gauntlet and didn't win that. And then we followed it up with him getting choked out by a Mexican on Dynamite. I know this pretty much is going to be like, oh, they're going to wrestle each other at the Forbidden Door. Who cares? Who gives a shit, really? Nobody gives a damn. Then the Young Bucks, their entrance video was cut short. Their pyro was cut. Their music was cut off. The video was cut off. I thought that was pretty funny. You know, they're not above taking the piss out of themselves, but they're not going far enough. I don't think they're going far enough. But they're trying to put forth some effort and trying to make themselves entertaining. They got to keep trying. They got to try a little bit harder, but I give them some respect for trying. MVP said there's no need for celebration. They knew they beat Jet Speed and the Patriarchy. They're bored. They have no competition. And that's unfortunate because if they're bored, I know I'm bored. MJF says that he's fine with Hangman Page becoming the world champion because it gives him something to prove. And he says that he doesn't need the contract to beat Hangman Page. He is the physical embodiment of Hangman Page's depression. And if we're going back to that, I might as well just punch my card and stop watching this show. I have zero interest in going back to Hangman Page being depressed and the anxious millennial cowboy. I do not care about that. Please do not subject any of us to that ever again. And I need MJF to grow up. One of the things that Tony Khan said that I feel shows that he just doesn't have a good grasp on what he's watching. He's a little too in the weeds. He said that MJF is a white collar Stone Cold Steve Austin, which defeats the fucking purpose of Stone Cold Steve Austin. What Stone Cold Steve Austin was The very essence of the character is blue collar. You cannot have a white collar Stone Cold Steve Austin. There is no such thing. There is no such thing. If anything, if you want to talk about rich rebels or rich revolutionaries, guys who stand up against the system or whatever the fuck, that's not even MJF. MJF is a parasite. It literally fits his character that he latches himself onto people or things or whatever, and he uses whatever he needs to get to the top. He is a social climber, a typical sociopath. That works. That's a good character for a guy like him. When you see, it's a classic American Psycho, why they would try to pitch him as Stone Cold Steve Austin. Like, again, you're setting this guy up for failure because now people are going to look at this guy and start criticizing him because of some dumb shit Tony Khan said, when that's not real. What is real, however, is that MJF is a classic character that you will see in movies and TV shows and guys that you've met before in real life, where anytime something is hot or somebody is cool, he tries to attach himself or buddy up to it and try to make himself, he try to use it to further himself. He doesn't really believe in anything. He only really believes in himself, and he barely does that. The MJF character, as it is been set up, is a bundle of traumas and no real identity outside of the traumas. He's always talking about, the Jew boy and, losing his girlfriend and getting beat up, or, some type of trauma that he had to deal with, the fans rejecting him. And he is completely reactive. The idea that MJF is a character with morals, no, he's not. Part of why everybody likes MJF is he is an amoral character. And he's in some ways completely immoral. He is not Stone Cold Steve Austin. Please stop saying stupid shit. Tony, I know you're trying to get the conversation going, but you only really set your own talent up for failure when you say stuff like this. Please stop doing that. Please stop it. And I don't really want to see Hangman Page versus MJF, but if we must, then we must. Edge says he didn't want to save Christian because Christian is an asshole, and that Christian is jealous of him. And he didn't blame the Waynes or Kip Sabian for what they did because he told Christian that it would happen. He said he came back to get FTR because they were his friends. And then they started saying that he was holding them back and they stole 4 months of his career. Then the small, bald man came out there with Kevin Koo, who they tried to pretend was security. Let me tell you this. If you go to a place and security has blonde and purple hair, you're not secure. You're not safe. I guarantee you. If you go to a place and your security guards got time to dye their hair, you are not safe. If he ain't some 6 foot dark skinned guy or some 6 foot tattooed white man, you probably are not safe. I will not go into another bar. Last time I went to a bar, the bouncer, the security guy, was a gigantic, tatted up white man who looked like he stepped straight out of either a Klan rally, or B, a motorcycle club. I felt perfectly safe. If I had walked in there and some skinny, fat, blue dyed haired guy, I'd be like, nah, man, we all gonna die. If some jump off, this guy's gonna be the first one to fucking run. We're all gonna die. So, no, Kevin Koo might be a pretty cool wrestler. He's kind of bland, but dead giveaway that he is not real security. And why would Tony Khan use an indie wrestler as security when his fans know all the fucking indie wrestlers? I mean, they know all the indie wrestlers, and that's the only thing I kept seeing is Edge is the worst wrestler in the ring. Because everybody fucking... Look, we already know that the security guys are wrestlers, but at least in WWE, if you use an indie guy, the fans don't know because they don't watch everything. But these goddamn AEW fans know everybody. You can't even get that one past the goalpost. Anyway, there's some kind of injunction on Edge that he can't touch FTR. He's going to be fired. But the injunction doesn't cover Stokely, so Stokely gets speared. It was stupid, pointless, garbage. Who cares about this trash? Obviously, we're just building up Christian for a big return. Later, Nick Wayne said that Christian was a liability and that he's only 20 years old. And Christian was saying, how many world titles did you win? He says, no. How many world titles will I win? You know, how many times will I be, I'm going to be a superstar. I'm going to be the face of TNT and AEW. This company going to go out of business if he ends up being the face of it. But then again, they like having all of these random Will Ospreay clones as top guys. I don't want to pull the plug on a guy this young because Nick Wayne is just, and the guy is literally half my age. So it's not like I'm going to pull the plug on him and say he's never going to be shit and he's 20 years old. That's completely unfair. But I can tell you, from what I've seen so far, I don't think Nick Wayne got it. He's got some time to really put forth the effort, and maybe he changes his look. Maybe he grows up and he puts some weight on. He gets some muscle. Maybe he learns how to crack a joke or, wrestle a different style. I mean, Kyle Fletcher changed a lot, and I got to give him credit. Kyle Fletcher did a whole hell of a lot to separate himself from Will Ospreay, and now he's one of the better guys on the roster. Maybe Nick Wayne can do the same thing, but I don't believe it. When I see guys like Hook and Private Party and what's the other guys, Top Flight, and those guys who have been around in AEW forever and they've had almost no character growth whatsoever, I don't believe it. So I'm going to say I hope this kid didn't just get set up for failure with this verbiage. But we'll see. And I don't care about this thing. Christian's going to come back, and I guess they're going to put him in the tweener mode where he's going to need Edge, and him and Edge they're going to kiss and make up, and then maybe they'll be the guys that'll end up fighting the Hurt Business for the tag team championships after they get done with FTR. And you know what? That could be fun. The unfortunate bit is it's going to be a while before we get there. It's going to be a whole long time before we get there. Next, Tekla defeated Queen Aminata, Chris Statlander, and Willow in a $100,000 fatal four-way. Another one of these stupid financial matches. We don't believe that you're giving these girls $100,000 for winning a fucking match. Nobody believes that. The match wasn't worth watching. It's another fatal four-way triple threat bullshit match. You were better off doing Tekla versus Queen Aminata in some kind of gimmick, like 2 out of 3 falls or submission match or something like that. Because at least they've been on TV feuding with each other, and they've talked excessively about these two feuding. They could have at least had the singles match with a gimmick, and could have done something fun, maybe. The angle coming out of this match is that Sky Blue and Julia Hart are now teaming up with Tekla, but we don't know why. We don't know. They're friends all of a sudden, and this thing is happening. Poor Willow. Why is she still in this situation? I know she's very happy, but Jesus Christ, man. Damn. Toni Storm showed up. She's still being LGBT as fuck. Then she talking about how Luther is injured. Her promo was full of a whole bunch of nothing. It was just a bunch of gay shit, and her calling herself a tramp and a trollop and all this sort of stuff. A thing that popped up on the screen says she's the big one. She's the real world champion around there. And that there's now that Luther is injured and Mina Shirakawa is also injured, there's nobody to protect Toni Storm when she cashes in her contract. There's not going to be any happy endings, and that her murderer is here. Nobody believes Athena when she talks like this. But Mina Shirakawa being injured is crazy because she just won the ROH Women's TV belt because Red Velvet was hurt. So the very next day, after she won a championship because Red Velvet was hurt, she got hurt. So now we got to have an interim television women's champion in Ring of Honor. Oh, Jesus. Athena versus Toni Storm is fine. Obviously, they're going to have to put a little bit more energy into this. Who's the real world's champion? Could be a fun angle. But they're using this contract like a Money in the Bank, which of course they've already used earlier this year with Christian. I'm not thrilled by that concept, but whatever. If Athena wins it, fine. If she doesn't win it, fine. She just kind of goes back to what she is. I think a slick way of doing this thing would be for it to be title versus title. That's what I would consider it. I would consider it title versus title. Athena's not winning. If she were to win, and maybe that's why you don't do title versus titles, because Athena's not going to win. But she can't be Ring of Honor Women's Champion forever now. I mean, goddamn. At some point, you have to actually do something with that division and move that division forward. But it was fine. Whatever. Okada defeated some kind of jabroni, and then he got confronted by Swerve. Everybody pissed their pants because they're very excited about this. I don't care about that at all. I don't even understand what the point of it is. Okada got his theme song changed as well. People were very upset about that. I don't care about that. I mean, he's had the same theme song in New Japan forever. They're changing his character up a little bit, putting a little tweak on it. He's a unified champion. He's hanging out with Don Callis. A new presentation wouldn't kill the fucking guy. A new theme song, same nickname, new theme song, wouldn't kill him. I'm not married to his New Japan theme anyway, so I don't really care. But some people who are, it's like, no, turn it back now. If we make enough noise, Tony Khan will turn it back. Yeah, he will. Surely he will, because that's what he does. He listens to the people who are costing him millions of dollars. That's the entirety of Dynamite, by the way. A stupid fucking show, a profoundly stupid show. And of course the people who like Dynamite love Dynamite. They like it regardless. And the people who hate it regardless. So I'm in the boat where I don't like most Dynamite, so I didn't like this. What made it worse is NXT wasn't great, right? Yesterday. But you could tell that NXT was putting a lot of effort into building up next week's show because they're going to be on the road. Here, AEW is doing the exact opposite. They're going to be in this same building next week, and they put in zero effort into building this show. But they do have Forbidden Door coming up, so there's going to be a whole lot of more crossovers and New Japan stuff coming. So we'll see how it works out. But this was a terrible show, if we're being honest. All right. So other than that, Tony Khan did an interview where he talked about feeling that Conan double crossed him. Said that FTR once told him that there was WWE cameras at a AAA show. This was in 2022 or something like that when they signed Dragon Lee, and these WWE cameras are there. Why would they need to use WWE cameras? That's my question. Look, Conan already admitted that he double-crossed Tony Khan. This is not new information. He's discussed this a long time ago. But the idea that there would be WWE cameras and a WWE production truck back there or something like that is pretty laughable, dog. Like, yeah, it's also pretty funny that Tony Khan, like, everybody is a stooge for Tony Khan all of a sudden. FTR stooges and Swerve is a stooge. Everybody's whispering and telling Tony Khan, got him all paranoid. He's sitting in his mansion fielding text messages about, I saw a WWE camera down here in Guadalajara. Who gives a fuck? Who cares, man? You got double crossed by Conan, but then again, we already knew that because you and Conan have been going back and forth for years now. It's not a big deal. And then before the official purchase, Tony essentially cut off AAA and started working with CMLL. So it is what it is. Everybody can't be happy at the same time sometimes, man. But Conan did admit that he pushed Dragon Lee to sign with WWE, just like he admitted that he pushed Rey Fenix and Penta to sign with WWE. I mean, this has been something that he's talked about. So I know Tony Khan being open about it, he's a little late. He should have been early on this, but whatever. They also mentioned, I saw a note that said that Will Ospreay is going to be gone for about a month. He's working, quote unquote, banged up. Yeah, I bet. I bet he is banged up. I bet something or other. Whatever, man. who who gives a shit? But this is a company that has Samoa Joe on the roster and uses him regularly and not putting him in main events. I don't understand it. You got Powerhouse Hobbs, you don't put him in main events, but we're deeply concerned about fucking 5'5" Darby Allin, who you're gonna try to pretend is Sting because he's gonna come down the rafters or whatever. It's ridiculous. It's really truly ridiculous stuff. And Tony Khan trying to live out the Attitude Era or live out, you know, 2000s era Ring of Honor or 2010s PWG or whatever the fuck is nonsensical, at least to me. Why would you try to live out either things everybody's seen already and you're just doing a poor man's rendition of? Why be a cover band? Or B, why copy something that was not successful on a large scale? Why be bothered? At least when WWE was ripping off ECW's popularity was growing. You know, AEW was ripping off companies that went out of business. You're ripping off companies that you just bought. This is ridiculous. This is stupid. You know, if you're going to rip something off, at least make it better. You're making it worse. Like, share, subscribe. Talk to you guys later. Peace.